So please welcome Ms. Dalal Buhejji, Senior Manager for Financial Services, Bahrain EDB. Good round of applause. Ms. Rose Murad, Research Analyst, Bahrain FinTech Bay. And Mr. Abdulla Salim, Acting Director, Customer Care, Zain, Bahrain. Thank you very much for joining me for the panel. Let's probably start with introducing yourself and tell us what your organizations are actually doing in terms of inclusion and diversity.
Right, so basically I look after the customer care operations and I hold the customer experience role, overseeing customer interactions across touch points. I'll address the diversity topic from the impact that it could basically deliver on customer experience, customer care metrics, and CSAT. So more of a practical point of view, yeah. I think Fatima, before me, actually addressed the topic from HR policies and basically the group vision. So I'll address it from a practical point of view, yeah.
Hi everyone, so my name is Rose Murad from the Bahrain FinTech Bay. So I manage the research team in regards to for producing publications and thought leadership pieces. Specifically, we look into different dynamics in the ecosystem, whether it's talent development, whether it's regulations. That was the most recent publication we released. And soon enough, we're also going to look into women in fintech. So in terms of that, that's a publication that we're releasing in the second quarter of 2019. And we're going to address exactly trying to see what is the state of play when it comes to the gender dynamics in this emerging ecosystem, as well as how can we accelerate the trend to ensure that there is equal opportunities for everyone who wants to be involved. In terms of Bahrain FinTech Bay also, some interesting points is we have, 65% of our employees are females, so highlighting gender balance. And another interesting fact was we recently launched the FinTech Talent Program where we're accepting applications. But what was interesting about it was we found that a majority of the applicants were female, showing that there is a high demand in the market right now and something that we really want to tap into to ensure that there is that diversity.
Hi everyone, Dalal Buhejji from the Bahrain Economic Development Board. As most of you know, we are the first point of entry for any company thinking of establishing a presence here, a company that's regional, international, or even local. Financial services has always been a key market that we always are keen to attract and further grow. And FinTech has been a subsector that we've been heavily focused on growing in Bahrain. I personally, with a committee of 14 women, have also initiated the Women in FinTech initiative, which is basically an initiative that supports the growth of women involvement in the whole FinTech ecosystem. Just a good fact to mention that the EDB is 70% all women, 50% of us are on a management position.
It deserves a good round of applause. 70%, have you heard that? It's amazing. A little bit of my background and why I am here. So I'm the founder of a legal tech company. There are not so many available in this region. We provide a platform for everyone who is seeking a legal advice, including Bahrain, including Saudi Arabia, and a lot more in the region, where you can get legal advice free of charge, documents, and much more, everything with regards to legal. And here I am probably because I'm the female founder and I've been through a lot of, different challenges that I've encountered along the way. And I want to start a discussion with a little bit of a step back from the diversity itself. So if we will speak to somebody in South Africa, when we speak diversity, they speak diversity of a race, right? Here probably we will mean a diversity of the culture because 4 countries where foreigners constitute the majority population are in the Middle East, so it's important to work in the different cultural backgrounds, and the same with the diversity of the gender. So probably what are your input and how do you think how important it is for everyone who was doing the business specifically in this region to understand diversity and its impact? How do you think how it's impacting your businesses particularly? Would you like to start?
I mean, if I was to speak more specifically on FinTech, I mean, diversity is very important for innovation. And FinTech is a very innovative sector. So you would require diversity in terms of gender or background or even culture to create the right solutions to cater to any issues that are out there. So we've seen that the most successful startups or FinTech startups are very diverse in background. You know, we want to create that right ecosystem in Bahrain to welcome diversity, gender or not, just general diversity, to be able to create the right innovative ecosystem.
Right. I agree with Dalal about that. So, especially with the FinTech industry, with the FinTech industry, when we look at the solutions, they're consumer-centric. So, we're looking into how can they accommodate consumers in terms of being user-friendly, accessible, and generally assisting them with their needs. So, to really achieve that dynamic, you need to ensure that there is diversity with the team that's producing these solutions, because you get different perspectives, you get different awareness of what are the needs and what are the expectations in the market. And that it falls into the whole idea of FinTech solutions being accessible to different types of cultures and diversity, just diverse characteristics. Also, something that was quite interesting in terms of having diversity in the industry, and we've mentioned this in the FinTech network, is the fact that with diversity, you create role models, which is something that's very crucial, especially in this industry as it's emerging and as it's something quite new and awareness is quite low in the market about it. You want to ensure that young students and incoming employees are able to look at what's going on in the market and say, this is someone who I can see as a role model. This is going to push me and not discourage me to actually move forward and pursue this career forward.
Right. And Abdulla, we discussed during the break that you work in the customer care specifically, and you saw the differences in the performance base on women and men. Can you tell us more about that?
Right. So basically, we do measure, like many organizations and even the financial and banking industry, we do measure customer satisfaction, recommendation, so TNPS. We do measure customer effort. It's real time across touch points. And we usually look at it, let's say, by individual. We look at it by branch. We look at it based on customer segment. So we have all those dimensions. I never looked at the numbers based on, let's say, gender, male and female. When this basically discussion topic came in, I took the historical data and I looked at some of the numbers, and I was surprised to see that female CSAT scores rated by our customers were actually higher compared to male. And I was thinking what could be basically the reasons behind this. And it's something worth basically zooming into. It could be due to either the empathy, listening skills, patience that female workforce would have compared to male employees. And it's very crucial and important skills in the service industry. That's an insight actually I got a few days back only. Yeah.
Also, inclusion and diversity actually impacting the business. So we actually deliver our businesses better in case we have a diversity and inclusion. So this is a good point for a start. Any organization that is still thinking whether they want or not, they will consider hiring more women or more men on any roles, basically. It doesn't matter whether this is a management positions or not, but it will affect the business. Right? So let's go for probably a couple of questions from the audience. If we are talking about equal rights and opportunities, do you also give male worker 4 months of paternity leave to support his partner? So it's probably a question to your organizations. Do you?
Yeah, we don't. Yeah.
I'm not sure that it's even...
No, and I don't think it will ever happen as well. Yeah.
Really? Why not? Well, this is interesting. I really want to know your input on that. Why do you think it's never going to happen?
So I think it's a cultural, basically, thing where the big part of the parenting role, especially in the early months, lies on the mother. Giving out men an equal paternity leave, I don't see it happening.
Dalal?
I mean, in the EDB, we don't have a 4-month policy for men, but we do have an equal opportunities committee where we do look at, even though we're heavily female-dominated organization, we make sure that we give equal opportunities for both male and female. And recently, we have increased the paternity leave for men in EDB. It's not significant. It's just additional few more days, but it's a start. And that's something that's been looked at.
Rose, what do you think?
I definitely agree with that. So we do see that within Bahrain there is that culture dynamic, as mentioned, where we have to look into the subject. But there is also that push, as similar to the EDB, there are organizations that are looking into it gradually.
Right. So let's maybe speak, because we just touched upon the cultural intelligence within the region. So we tend to have a certain very strong cultural understanding of what the roles are for male and a female. How do you think, whether this is shifting towards something where male would have the opportunity to get the paternity leave as equal to support the partner for the equal time or not? How important it is to, in general, cultivate the differences and shifts in the cultural intelligence?
For the Women in FinTech initiative, if I was going to speak on that more specifically, the whole goal and mission of it is to create the right opportunities and awareness of the different kind of opportunities that are around in the entire ecosystem. And that's where kind of the mind shift needs to come into place, where there are opportunities that will emerge that are not specifically the traditional way of us thinking that's where the jobs are. So when we look at the full FinTech ecosystem, there's many elements that play a big role in cultivating and growing this sector. Rose, for instance, is very heavily focused on the whole research aspect of things. Right. And she is a member of Women in FinTech initiative. I work at the, attracting companies to come and set up. That's, involvement in the Women in FinTech initiative. But we do also have FinTech entrepreneurs that are part of the committee. We do have women that are leading on a number of accelerators that support the acceleration programs of FinTech companies. So, I think with innovation, there's going to be a lot of new opportunities that will emerge that are not specifically very traditional in the sense where the opportunities are more vast and larger. And that's where, the whole initiative came into place to create and highlight that kind of aspect.
Right. So because we've just mentioned the diversity in gender, I have to ask this question. What is the difference in hiring in general for male candidate and female candidate? What are the differences what you have to consider as an employer when you hire? So is this a maternity leave if the woman is young enough and you will assume that she will get married and get pregnant and then her focus will be shifted? Or is this something that you are not considering initially hiring?
I'll give my views on this. Mm-hmm. We believe in offering basically the opportunities equally to both men and women, holding the same experiences and, let's say, qualifications, regardless of the gender. Today, we do have 50-50 basically recruitment policy defined in a place to ensure that we are offering basically equal opportunities to both male and female. The things that you have mentioned, like a pregnant woman coming into an interview and so on, should not basically be considered at all. The policies we set in a place today is to attract and retain female employees. Yeah.
And so the next question is with regards to Fatma's presentation about 50-50 employment policy in Zain. Can you tell us a bit more on how successful you are in this? Because you've introduced this last year, the initiative. What are you aiming for in terms of hiring?
So some of the goals are basically defined and tangible, like female in leadership role. We were at 14.5%. We are aiming to reach 25% across Zain operations by 2020. Within the customer care operations, we are around 45% female ratio, which is an acceptable percentage, I would say. And the new recruits policy throughout the recruitment, let's say, stages, as defined and in place since last year, and it's been very successful. And care operations, as I said, yes, we are seeing basically more, higher rates, more CSAT scores in female agents and employees, which is a positive sign for the direction that we have taken. Yeah.
Rose, I have a question to you with regards to Bahrain FinTech Bay has recently introduced a Women in FinTech report. So can you please share some of the important reports areas that were introduced for the FinTech area?
As I mentioned previously, it's this is part of our series of publications in regards to really understanding the ecosystem and its different dynamics. So the Women in FinTech is our next publication that is aimed to release in quarter 2 of 2019. And what we look into, like I said, is we're trying to understand first what's the state of play to really address that, because there's not much information as it's a new ecosystem. New dynamics need to be studied. So we need to highlight first, investigate what's going on there, and then see how can we accelerate the trend to ensure that diversity is maintained in the ecosystem. So how we broke it down was we first looked at education. And within education, we wanted to see basically what are the number of STEM students, what are the number of business students, what is the resources that they're provided. Because within our previous publication, that was the Bahrain FinTech Talent Report, we saw that for an ecosystem to really be thriving, you need 4 key skills, which is financial, technical, entrepreneurial, and soft skills. So, and that was linked highly to the STEM expertise, hence why when we looked at the numbers, we saw that within the past 4 years, it's been gradual, but there has been an uptick of female STEM university students in Bahrain. So there is a focus, there is an interest in the market, and also there are resources that are emerging to help further develop and further raise awareness for both female and male university students to develop these skills. From there, then we look into the workforce, and we see that there is an interesting, so we looked at the financial services industry as an example, since it's a more mature case that we can investigate. And we saw that it was roughly, the percentage within the past year was 30 to 70% female to male. And when it came to Bahrainis, it was a closer gap, so 40 to 60% roughly. So, and once again, there was a gradual but slow, increase in terms of female participation. So however, the only thing that we did notice was there still needs to be a focus in regards to career development. So within the general employment, there is that growth, but we need to ensure that that is spread across all levels of employment. So within managerial level, within board members, and etc.
Right, and so I have a question to you, Dalal. It was here on the screen, but it disappeared. I find it here. So the EDB is very inclusive and diverse. What can EDB do to help other startups and enterprises achieve the same results?
So, part of our mandate is obviously to support companies to come and set up. And for us to be able to do that, we have to advocate for policy changes to be able to create the right ecosystem for them to operate. Yes, we are a very diverse organization, but what we need to focus on is creating the right framework for these companies to come and set up and to host both genders in it. So I think, again, going back, since I'm a more fintech specialist and a financial services specialist, looking at that sector, you need to have the right frameworks in place to support companies to come and establish, regardless of, the gender. One of them having the right policies in place. The companies won't come and set up if you don't have the right policies. And luckily, we have a very forward-thinking regulator that is putting the right framework and the right regulations for companies to come and set up. I think one aspect that is still a work in progress is having the right funding for companies. Some reports say that funding is less when it comes to a female entrepreneur. Maybe Rose can speak more about that rather than male entrepreneurs. So what kind of VCs can we attract to support funding companies that are headed by women entrepreneurs. So that's something from our aspect that we're very heavily focused on trying to create. But also, what kind of alternative ways of funding that could be put in place. Recently, we've attracted Beehive, a crowdfunding platform that gives an alternative way to support fintech companies, regardless whether it's a male or female entrepreneur. And then creating the right, lifestyle and ecosystem. So Bahrain has been ranked number 1 by HSBC survey in the region to be the best place for expats to live in, which is why a lot of fintech companies, a lot of startup companies do like to establish presence here in Bahrain. But also, it's just such a small country that they can easily set up here, test their solutions, and then roll it out to the region. So that's what we're doing from an ADB perspective to support more diversity in the sector.
Now I'm going to ask the question through the question out to all of you. Most Equal Place promotes paternity equality to maternity. It removes the maternity stigma that holds women back in return to work. Can Bahrain do it? So can you support women as much so that they would want to leave their homes and be back to the workplaces? And how can we do it?
It's more of an HR kind of question, but again, I think it's beyond just giving the right framework and the right time.
Right.
But there's more to it than just that. What other opportunities that you can provide to support both genders.
Yeah, so I might probably answer this question from my own perspective. I think if Bahrain would introduce more of a understanding attitude to women who are coming back from maternity leave, this is important for a woman to know that it will be okay to be sometimes late, but stay a bit later too, to do the work, when it's important to not only tick the boxes that I came back, but I matter as a team member. So probably, I don't know if this is the answer to your question, but I think it's more about cultural inter-human relationship within the organization that will build this comforting place for a woman to come back. Let's take something else. Miss Murad, Bahrain FinTech Bay has a hackathon coming up. Is this true? Right. At the end of the month, what are they doing to attract all students?
So in regards to the hackathon, we do have close relationships when it comes to the universities in Bahrain. And we have had different opportunities to present to these students to highlight what's about in regards to the hackathon and general opportunities. When it comes to our different operations, talent is a crucial part of it. Because without the talent, without developing the talents, attracting students, retaining it, there's the growth of the industry can't be secured. So through that's why we've had different initiatives, whether it's because first of all, something again we've mentioned is awareness is key. To really attract students, we have to ensure that awareness is embedded into the ecosystem. And we do that by ensuring that we have a series of publications that is available online and for free for them to access whenever necessary. We ensure that we have close ties with these universities to collaborate on different initiatives and ensure that communication is maintained. And just have a general open communication channel with them.
So then we have, in regards to HR policy, we've discussed this question. Is it still common for design? It is still common for design, creative, and DUX firms here to be male-dominated. This is where most customer experience design starts. How can we fix it?
I believe with the right basically recruitment policies and the culture, the ecosystem to support female workforce, a balance can be basically reached. And I'm proud to say that the customer experience unit within Zain Bahrain is mainly basically consisting of female employees. I think having the right policies to attract and retain females within the workforce is important to resolve such challenge. Yeah.
Very interesting question. I was waiting for it to come. In diversity of gender, should we be pursuing equality of opportunity or equality of outcome? So we are tapping into the salary question here. Maybe we will start with you because you are having 75% of women in your organization. So how does it work in terms of outcome?
I mean, you know, when it comes to the organization, 70% are women because, you know, they're ticked all the right boxes to be able to handle that.
They are amazing. I can say that.
Thank you.
I've worked with them.
But so are the men as well in the organization. And I think the outcome, we all have, you know, KPIs by the end of the year that we need to achieve, and all of us work together in achieving that. I think the beauty of the organization, it's a very collaborative organization. It's very fluid. Where people can support each other across different departments, and I think that's where you know, it's been very successful model where you know, a lot of people support each other in the organization to achieve the greater goal that we want to achieve. And I think the mission is very much clear in the organization that we all work together to achieve that.
Rose, would you have something to add to this? From the FinTech perspective?
So in regards to FinTech, that's, as I previously mentioned with the FinTech Talent Program, there's clearly that demand in regards to there being a high intake of applicants that are female, and we try to also represent that within our company. Clearly, as I've mentioned, there is a high number of employees that are female. And that just shows that the image that we're trying to express is that it is an inclusive ecosystem where people are allowed to enter without the need to be conscious of gender. And that's the kind of narrative that we want to play, because touching on something that you previously mentioned was in regards to funding. The Innovate Finance released this finding about 2018 where they found that around $1.7 billion of the VC FinTech investment, only 3% of that went to founding companies that had a founding team that was female-driven. Which is, you have to argue there's different dynamic reasons why that may have been caused. It may have been due to the lack of companies that had teams that were female-driven. Maybe it's for gender bias. There's a lot of dynamics that you have to consider. But the main issue there is the narrative. It's pushing out a narrative where it's discouraging people to pursue that. And we want to ensure that that is not the situation, especially in the case of Bahrain. And that's something that has been promoted from different entities, and something that we want to ensure that's prevented in terms of students also.
I mean, if I may add, so, you know, the FinTech ecosystem in Bahrain has grown quite substantially in the last couple of years. And we've seen it grow in different subsectors, whether it's, you know, RegTech or InsurTech or payments. And we've seen the involvement of diversity is quite heavily focused as well, specifically when it comes to innovation and FinTech. So, you know, now we need to look at what are the right frameworks and the right ecosystem to make the FinTech ecosystem thrive more. And, you know, funding is something that's very crucial, which we're looking at quite heavily. But also, like, looking at the other elements that play a role in any startup, whether it's FinTech or not. And for instance, the cost of doing business as well. That's a major issue to many of the FinTech companies that we deal with. You know, Bahrain has been ranked 50 to 60% more cost effective than other neighboring economies. So what can we do to sustain that and to continue that, to support the growth of innovation within startups?
All right. I have a question specifically for you here. Zain understands diversity very well, as shown by Ms. Fatima. How do other organizations learn from Zain? I'm not sure. You have to address this question, but maybe you can.
Well, I think based on my observation, as having the diversity and inclusion coming from the basically strategic objectives of the organization, of the group, is something key to have it working very well. Setting clear objectives and targets around this, having it part of the management priorities as well, will make the diversity and inclusion a very successful, let's say, program.
But have you seen this impacting other organizations around you, like maybe your peers, or I don't know, if you cooperate with FinTech Bay or with EDB, is it somehow affecting their diversity and inclusion programs?
I'll give you one simple example. When we announced the basically working mother policies recently in December, we had lots of positive feedback coming in from let's say, people working in other industries, and they were inquiring how you have done this, and what are the details behind it. And we can sense that there is basically a lot of interest to do more around working mothers policies and gender diversity policies. Yeah.
Can you tell us a bit more about this policy with moms included?
So yeah, as Fatma said, it offers the working mothers two things mainly. A longer maternity leave. So based on law, I believe it's around 45 days.
Right.
What Zain is offering across Zain operation is up to 4 months paid maternity leave that could be extended to 6 months. And when they return to work, it's a 6 hours working day for up to 4 years as well. It's a very basically generous policy to attract and retain female workforce. Based on what I have seen working in customer care operations, retention of female workforce is not something easy. The working environment is very demanding. Working 8 hours full time in contact center, back office, customer experience operations, and then basically holding the mother responsibilities back home is not something that easily achieved. So having these policies in place would definitely help us as Zain hire, recruit, and retain female workforce. Yeah.
Right. And with regards to funding in general for women in FinTech, is there any percentage available, any data available that will tell us that it's harder or easier for women to find funding for their FinTech projects in Bahrain?
Bahrain, I'm not sure exactly if there is that number. So it's just based on right now what's available globally, but I'm not sure, John.
I think funding as a whole is an issue regionally. When you look at seed funding or Series A, I think that's available. But when you go on a bigger ticket size, that's where the challenge is, regardless of the gender of the founder of the startup or the FinTech company. So us at EDB, that's something we're very heavily focused on, especially this year and the coming year, is what can we do to attract more VCs and more alternative ways of funding to support the growth of startups and FinTech. So again, it's not only a Bahrain thing. I think it's more of a even global issue.
So the question back to you, Dalal. We are talking about diversity and we are focusing only on women. Why? Diversity should be both male and female into consideration.
When it comes to the Women in FinTech initiative, it's all about creating the right role models to attract further women to join this FinTech ecosystem. And the reason why it was put in place is mainly because we've seen very successful women that are already growing the FinTech ecosystem. And we do have a lot of male colleagues that are supporting this initiative. In fact, the whole idea came from one of our colleagues who's a male who decided, like, you know what? And it actually came from one of those panels where a lot of male were sitting on the panel discussing payments and FinTech, and a lot of their colleagues are women. So it's like, why don't we put more focus on that and showcase what other opportunities for women to come in? And, Abdulla and Rose spoke about the different challenges that women might have in entering the workspace, especially when it comes to FinTech. So FinTech is very flexible in that sense, so women can take part in this drive and take different roles to grow the whole ecosystem.
All right, so the time is up. We have to wrap up. And I would ask you to give sort of the last advice for the companies to include for inclusion and diversity for their organization. Let's start with you.
So if I was to give advice, it's more about how can you bring more innovation to your organization. I think now with all the tools that we have in place, we can create a lot of different ways of moving away from a traditional way of doing business to a more innovative way of doing business. So, you know, put that in mind when operating.
So something I want to bring up is, actually we spoke about it right before this panel, was about the concept of cultural intelligence. So that's something that it plays into the whole concept of diversity. So specifically there's this whole argument in terms of, you know, robots are taking our jobs, that jobs are being automated, and there's a negative perception to this. However, the thing that is crucial is that there still needs to be cultural and emotional intelligence, and that's how roles and tasks and employees are relevant. And that's how the incoming workforce can still maintain opportunities despite the rise of technical solutions. So with diversity, we can ensure that there is this cultural and emotional intelligence because there are different perceptions that are entering into the market. And there are different perceptions, and there are, as in, for example, when it comes to spending habits, there are different ways that you need to look at it. Different individuals have different expectations and different needs. By ensuring that there is that awareness, we can ensure that these solutions also can interact with different consumers.
Yeah, I believe throughout the summit, a lot of basically discussions were happening around digitalization, moving interactions from conventional bank branches to basically digital channels, offloading the basically bank branches from basic, high volume, low value interactions to focus more on revenue generation maybe, and the use of digital. All of these basically things would require a higher skilled workforce, higher talent. And you definitely cannot basically get that by ignoring half of the talent pool. Today, women, they represent half of the population and half of the available talent pool. Having the right policies to basically recruit, retain, and basically have an equal opportunity for female and male today is crucial to achieve these objectives. Yes, we can offload basic jobs, but the remaining basically jobs will require higher skills that requires a different set basically of experiences, qualifications, and so on. So I do believe it's an important topic. Yeah.
Right, and there was a quick note to the moderator with regards to the topic that we were actually discussing. The topic was improving the customer experience. And I think, Abdulla, you've covered this because you are the only one who's actually directly working with the customer experience, and I think you've addressed the issue. I'm hoping that the conversation here was more of a natural going, and so if there are still questions with regards to how diversity and inclusion affects the customer care, I think all of the above, all of the discussed, is somehow in a different shape or form affects the customer experience, because then there are more women and men included in the discussion. So if you have more questions, please reach out to my amazing co-panelists, and thank you very much for your time.